This is District Attorney Markham. The Big Nick murder case opened when Nick Bramley was found shot, not as we believed by a policeman, but as Philo Vance insisted, by someone else. Bramley's murder was followed by the death of Ears Snyder, one of his gang. 3 people who had reason to want Bramley dead are known to us, and also the possible tie-up between the 2 murders. Our suspects are Mrs. Bramley, Mitzi Courtney, and Nick's brother Tommy, all of whom are still at liberty.
Yeah, what a team, Mitzi. What a combination. You and me, the best.
And nobody even coming in second, Tommy. What you got for Mitzi?
This. Hey, you took something from me. Give it back.
And there are silly people in this world that take time to eat and sleep. I'll take another one.
Ooh, greedy, aren't you?
You hate that, don't you?
Well, not so anybody can notice. Yeah, things are going pretty good for me. You know that, Mitzi.
Yeah, I figured it. You got everything your brother owned. His boys, his rackets, his car.
And his girl.
Yeah.
Ah, Mick didn't deserve you. He didn't know how to treat you.
Thanks for taking care of him.
What?
Nothing. I just said thanks for taking care of him.
Well, what are you thanking me for? I didn't knock off my brother.
Well, wasn't that cop in the alley?
Look, what are you trying to do? Say I killed Nick? I knocked off Ears, sure, but I did that because... Hey, you had Ears kill Nick, didn't you?
Me?
Sure, Ears was nuts about you, nuts about any woman. You'd have done it if you asked him to. I figured that's what happened. Somebody planned the setup, but Ears did the job.
Get away from me.
Why, what did I do?
You don't rig a rap like that on Mitzi. Get away from me.
Oh, baby, you don't understand. I don't care. You did me a favor.
I'll do you a favor. I'll break a lamp over your head. Don't you try to make it look like I killed Nick. Don't do that, Tommy. Don't. I can't take any more stuff like that.
Baby, what's bothering you? Every 2 minutes you start jumping out of your skin. That skin's too pretty to jump out of. Now relax. Nothing's going to happen to you.
No? Then talk to that sister-in-law of yours.
Nick's wife?
Yeah.
What's she got to do with the way you're acting?
What's she got to do with it?
Yeah.
She's got everything to do with it. She comes up here, she calls me, she meets me on the street, she sends me letters. All very simple, all very nice and sweet. But all of them say I killed Nick. You've got to do something about her, Tommy. You got to.
Sure. If she upsets you like that, I will. I never liked her anyhow, Mitzi. Come on back here where you were. My shoulder looks kind of empty without your head on it.
Gee, Tommy, I don't know what's happening to me. Nick's wife's driving me nuts. You said you'd do something about it, will you, Tommy? Will you?
Sure. Now, come here, baby.
It's very simple, Mr. Markham. Either that girl killed Nick or his brother killed him. Believe me, I know.
I appreciate what you tell me, Mrs. Bramley, but the fact that you know doesn't constitute proof in a court of law. I'll have to have definite facts.
Well,
By the way, how did you know it wasn't the policeman's bullet that killed your husband?
Nick was smart. He wouldn't shoot it out with any cops.
But don't you understand? The policeman saw him.
No.
They were standing together. Nick shot at them, then he ran. They chased him up a blind alley, then saw him shoot at them from a 4th-floor window.
No.
One of the officers shot back. They went in and found your husband dead.
Oh, I know that's the story the newspapers carried, but that isn't true.
We found that out later when we checked the bullet in your husband's body and those fired from the officer's guns. Philo Vance knew somebody else had killed Big Nick even before that. How did you know?
Nick wouldn't shoot it out with any cops. He was too smart for that.
Oh, hello, Vance.
Hello, Markham. Forgive my barging in like this. I didn't know you had a visitor.
This is Nick Bramley's widow, Vance, Mrs. Bramley, Philo Vance.
How do you do?
How do you do?
Mrs. Bramley insists that it was Mitzi Courtney or Tommy Bramley who killed her husband, Vance.
Does she?
Yes.
Well, that's hardly startling information. We've always thought it was either of them or...
Or
Yes, or you, Mrs. Bramley.
I didn't kill him. I loved him. I want Mr. Markham to find out which one of them did it.
I think I have a plan to do just that. But I'll need some help.
From me?
That's right.
Just tell me what you want me to do.
That's what I was hoping you'd say. All right, Mrs. Bramley, I'll tell you what I want you to do, and if you do it, I'll deliver your husband's killer to Mr. Markham tonight.
Hello, Tom Bramley speaking.
This is Mitzi, Tommy.
Oh, baby.
Listen,
Hey, I haven't had a chance to do anything about that little matter we spoke
never
of.
mind what you had. You got a chance now. Mrs. Bramley just called me. She's on the way over to this apartment. Now, you get here fast, you understand? Fast. This is the pail.
Hey, every time you talk to that dame or even think about it, you start to blow your brain. Will you relax?
Come on over, Tommy. She told me on the phone she's coming with evidence that'll send either you or me up for Big Nick's murder.
She didn't say which one she had the dope on, huh?
No, but... Tommy,
Yeah?
I don't want that to happen to either of us.
Markham, if this little plan of mine works, this case will be over very soon.
I've got my fingers crossed. What floor is Miss Courtney's apartment?
The next one, according to Mrs. Bramley's instructions.
You know, of course, we're a half hour earlier than we told Mrs. Bramley we'd be here.
Yes, that's part of the plan. After you.
Thanks.
Apartment 5E. That should be right down at the end of this hall.
Vance, I've been thinking.
And?
Isn't it possible that Tommy Bramley and Mitzi Courtney did the killing of Nick Bramley together?
Whom did the policeman chase down that blind alley and into that house, Markham?
Why, Big Nick, of course. Somebody was hiding in the house. After he shot at the police officers, somebody else shot him. He fell to the floor, and the officers, finding the body when they went up, never thought to look for anybody else.
Did the officers hear the shot that killed Nick?
Why, no. What are you doing? Trying to make this thing even more mysterious?
Not at all. I'm trying to make it as simple as I can. Well, here we are. Listen.
What's going on in that apartment?
Apparently all three of our suspects are there. That's the important thing. Let's go in.
The door's locked.
Yes.
I don't care who you are. I'm glad you're here. This woman's crazy. She has a gun. She tried to kill the both of us. She's lying.
All right, the three of you. Stop it. Stop accusing each other. Now, first of all, Miss Courtney and Mr. Bramley, my name is Philo Vance. This is District Attorney Markham.
So what?
Yeah, I recognize Markham, and I wouldn't care who you are. All I know is I'm glad you got here. This dame Nick's wife was going to brain Batty. She was going to kill Mitzi and me.
Yeah, that's right. She's got a gun right there in her coat pocket. She put it there when you knocked.
Mrs.
That's
Bramley?
ridiculous, of course, Mr. Vance. I did what you told me to, and it worked.
Oh.
What? I told them the story you made up, and they believed it. Then they both took out guns.
Right, that lying dame. I'll
Quiet,
smash her.
please. Go on, Mrs. Bramley.
Miss Courtney's gun is in her handbag. Tommy's is in a shoulder holster.
It is.
Take a look, if you like.
We'll check, of course. Go on, Mrs. Bramley.
I told him that Ears Snyder had spoken to me before he was taken for a ride, and he had told me how these
I
two...
can't take any more of this. I gotta get that dame. I
Now, listen,
got
take
to.
it easy.
That's an excellent idea. Go on, Mrs. Bramley.
I told him what you said for me to say.
Oh,
That
she
Ears had told me these two killed my husband and signed a paper I wrote out for him indicating just that.
Why?
They admitted killing Nick. Then they both pulled their guns and made me put my hands in the air.
Okay, this has gone far enough. This dame's lying. She got us both here and told us she was working for you. She
Yeah.
pulled a gun and got both of us reaching for the ceiling. She was going to let us both have it. But just before you came in, she told us she'd killed my brother. Only we were going to get the blame
That's
for
right.
it. She was going to say we tried to kill her and she shot first.
You don't believe that, of course, do you, Mr.
He'd
Vance?
said or I'll scratch his eyes out too if he don't.
Apparently, I'm faced with a ridiculous situation. Markham.
What do we do now? Somebody in this room is lying, but we've got to find out who. How do we do that?
Well, she was the one that was lying.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, please, quiet.
Get away with it.
Markham, the problem is which person or persons had their hands in the air.
The problem is which one had the guns out. All three have guns. They don't deny that.
I don't. I have a gun.
So have I.
You see, it's just as I told you. They held me...
You had a gun too. You were going to use it on Tommy and me.
All right, now, we've had enough of this. Markham, it's completely reasonable to you that whoever's lying right now is Big Nick's killer.
Yes, apparently somebody in this room did confess to killing Big Nick.
Whoever held the gun did that confessing, wouldn't you say?
Definitely, but how do we find out which held the gun, or guns, as the case may be?
That's very simple. I happened to notice the hands of these three people when we came into this room.
Observant, ain't he?
Very much so, Miss Courtney. And I'm glad I did, because it tells me which of you is lying. Markham, your murderer is Big Nick Bramley's widow.
Take this down, Miss Henderson.
Yes, Miss Markham.
Go ahead, Mrs. Bramley, please.
I, Elizabeth Bramley, killed my husband, Nicholas Bramley. He had humbled me, humiliated me, and I shot him with his own gun. Then I called on one of his men, Ears Snyder, to help me. Mr. Markham, I don't know exactly what Ears did.
I can fill that in, I think. Ears planted the body in the deserted house and then went out. Fired at the officers and had them chase him. He ran to the 4th floor, stood Nick's body up against the window, and fired down at the officers.
How do you know that, Vance? And how did you know the officers hadn't killed him?
I'll tell you how, Markham. Just let me finish this thought. Ears fired down at the street after holding Nick's body at the window. He knew he'd draw a gunshot in return, so he yanked the body back immediately after he heard the shot and put Nick's body on the floor. Then he hid.
I still don't know how you knew it wasn't the officer's bullet.
Nick was shot in the stomach. Now, you can't hit a man in the stomach when he's 4 floors above you. The chest maybe, the face, but not the stomach. Right, Markham?
Of course. Please go on with your confession, Mrs. Bramley.
Yes. After I killed Nick, I knew I could work on that girlfriend of his. Drive her crazy, maybe. Get her to go after me so that you, Mr. Markham, would think her responsible for Nick's death, too. That's why I came to your office, to be sure I'd be protected.
Who killed Ears Snyder, Mrs. Bramley?
Tommy, I suppose. For helping me cover up Nick's death. Tommy was Nick's brother, after all.
That's right, Vance. I forgot to tell you, Sergeant Heath got a confession from Tommy in the Ears Snyder murder. Now, there's only one thing I want cleared up.
And that is?
How you knew which of the 3 people in the room had a gun out.
Well,
We knew somebody was lying, but you knew it was Mrs. Bramley. She claimed at first that the other 2 had made her hold her hands in the air.
yes, I know. But did you look at her hands when we came in? Well, that's right, you told me you hadn't. Well, Markham, if you hold your hands in the air for 5 minutes, as somebody in Miss Courtney's apartment did, the blood runs out of the hands and down into the arms.
I get it. And when you lower your hands again, they're much more pale than they normally would be.
Exactly. When I came into the room, Miss Courtney and Tommy Bramley had the palest hands I'd ever seen. Mrs. Bramley's were normal, so it must have been Mrs. Bramley who held the gun and who lied to us. Very simple now, isn't it?
Most of it. Except why you enlisted Mrs. Bramley on our side.
I had to force a break in this case, Markham. That's why we got to Miss Courtney's apartment early. I wanted to give Mrs. Bramley, if she were our murderer, a chance to make a mistake, believing she had a half hour to cover it up in.
I thought I could get away with my story, Mr. Vance. It would have been a pretty good one.
I don't doubt that. But your hands gave you away, Mrs. Bramley. They were the beginning of your downfall.
And we are at the end of the Big Nick murder case.